Welcome everyone to today's webinar hosted by Caring.com with two special guests, Duro from NextWave and Holly Rehbock, our National Director of Senior Living Sales from Caring. Today we will be discussing all things tours. Alan will be sharing how you can automate communication around your tours to improve your tour completion rate, and Holly will share ways to step out of your tour guide routine and transform your tours into personalized visits. As we begin, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items for today's webinar. First, this is a one-way webcast, meaning only the presenters will have video and audio throughout today's presentation. However, we would still love to hear from you. At any point throughout the webinar, please submit your questions using the Q&A section within Zoom. We will be answering those questions live after our presentation today. And one of the questions that we receive every webinar is, will this presentation be recorded? And the answer is yes, we are recording, and we will send out both the recording and the slides following today's presentation. You can also find our entire webinar archive on our website, partners.caring.com. This free webinar is brought to you by Caring.com. So for anyone joining who may be less familiar, Caring has a portfolio of websites and referral services that millions of people use to research senior living and senior care. Our mission is to help as many seniors and their caregivers as possible through empathetic, expert guidance as they search for care services. And thousands of senior living agencies and senior living communities, and home care agencies partner with Caring to reach their target audience who's actively looking online for care solutions. One of the many reasons that care seekers turn to Caring is for our high integrity reviews program, where we have over 350,000 consumer reviews. So I'm excited today to introduce you to our expert presenters. Now, my name is Olivia Duke. I'm the B2B Marketing Director here at Caring, and I'll be serving as the moderator for today's presentation. Also from Caring, we have Holly Rehbock. Now, prior to joining our team at Caring, Holly spent over 2 decades in community sales roles. Now, you wouldn't guess it looking at her, but 2 decades, she served as a CCRC sales director and a regional community sales director before joining the Caring team. Now, I asked Holly to put a number to it, and she estimates that she's been involved in over 5,000 tours, either giving them herself or coaching others on tours. So I was expecting a high number, but that number certainly blew my mind. So we are very excited to have Holly sharing some of her best practices and anecdotes based on her experiences. Welcome, Holly.
Thanks, Olivia. Yes, the number shocked me as well. Happy to be here.
Additionally, we have Duro, who's the Chief Operating Officer at NextWave Co, joining us. Now, Alan, would you mind sharing a little about yourself and about NextWave to the group?
Sure, Olivia. Yeah, appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. Thank you guys for having us. Like Olivia said, I'm Alan, Chief Operating Officer at NextWave. Today, I'm going to show you guys a few ways that you can use automation to increase the number of people that show up for tours of your community. And hopefully, I can give you some tactics that you can implement in your community. At the very least, you got some food for thought. And like Olivia said, we're going to cover a lot of things here, but there is a Q&A section at the end. If I go through things too fast, just remember there's the Q&A section, and also the whole webinar is going to be recorded, and Olivia is going to send it out. To quickly introduce my company, we're called NextWave. And for the past 5 years, we've worked exclusively with clients in the senior housing industry. And over that time, we've uncovered what might be considered somewhat of an inconvenient truth, which is that the majority of senior living leads never actually get contacted. And since we've discovered this, we've crafted all of our services around a single goal, which is to help senior living salespeople make contact with more prospects while simultaneously helping them to reclaim their time. So Olivia said, our goal is to talk about turning more tours into move-ins. But well, you're going to do that. Sorry, you're going to do that.
Oh, great. Yeah. And just to preview, what Alan and Holly will be discussing today. Here's a brief look at the agenda. So first, Alan will walk through the items that you'll need to tackle automating your communication around a tour, and then he'll share an example cadence that he has seen help clients when it comes to increasing the tour completion rate and engagement. Then Holly will share her best practices on how you can transform your tours into memorable visits and make your community stand out. So finally, we will be hosting that live Q&A after the presentation where we will answer your submitted questions. So at any point, feel free to use that Q&A section to submit. And we will end with some final takeaways and ways to stay in touch with both Caring and NextWave. So without further ado, over to you, Alan, to talk through the items needed for automation.
Cool. Appreciate it, Olivia. Thank you. Like we said, our goal is to talk about turning more tours into move-ins. But before we show you how this works, we're just going to run through a few of the things that you're going to need to get started. So the first thing is a scheduling tool with built-in automation, and we're going to get into what that means exactly in a second. The second is to build an actual workflow, and this is kind of the fun part. This is where you get to create a repeatable process for the prospect before and after the tour. And then the third thing is a customized piece of content. For the purpose of this webinar, we're going to use a pre-tour information packet, but this could also be something like a customized welcome video of your community. So the first thing is the scheduling tool with automation built in. This is a calendar tool that connects with your salesperson's calendar. So an example of this would be something like Calendly or HubSpot's meetings link. A simple example is, when you get a reminder an hour before a call, like you guys probably did for this webinar, it says, hey, you've got a webinar coming up in an hour. That's an example of when automation is connected to a calendar event. The second thing, so this is kind of the fun part. This is building out the workflow. This is where you can get creative and really kind of customize the experience for the prospect. This is where you're going to dictate all the actions that happen both before and after the tour. So some examples are, an hour before the tour, you get a text that reminds you have a tour. An hour or the next day after the tour, you get an email that says, thanks for coming in. Those are all examples of workflow automations that can happen. This screenshot here is showing one example step of a workflow, but you can have 5 or 10 different actions around a single event using automation. You can really have as many as you want. So, and then the last piece here is a pre-tour information packet. This is something that we create for our clients at NextWave. In this packet, we include things like address or directions to your community. We'll include things like pictures of the staff. We'll also include things like an actual aerial shot of the parking lot, so you can see exactly where to park. And like I said, this could also be a welcome video from a salesperson or something like a pre-tour checklist. Really, the goal of this, especially the pre-tour packet, is to reduce the friction and anxiety that someone has before they go somewhere new. So this is going to help with the show up rate. And now we're going to get into kind of a real life example of what this looks like in action. So the first step, this is on the actual day that you book the tour. So someone just booked a tour. And cool, on this slide, we've got kind of a split screen of what the experience is like from the prospect standpoint and what the experience is like from the salesperson standpoint. We did an icon of a very busy senior living salesperson there. One of the beauties with the automation is that it can be used for both sides. It could be used for the prospect side, but it could also be used for the salesperson side. And the first thing that you're going to want is just a basic confirmation. So like, hey, you've just booked a tour, you're confirmed. Same with a calendar invite. It's something that gets sent out with the time and date confirming exactly where you're going to be. This seems like a small thing, but we've had clients who haven't used this before, and they did tours, handwritten tours, writing it in a calendar, kind of just hoping that the person would show up for the tour. But even this small step kind of sets a subconscious message of like, yes, it's in my calendar. This is actually happening. You've clicked accept, just like you guys probably did for this webinar. We believe just this simple automated step will increase the show up rate big time. So step 2, this is 24 hours before the tour happens. And this is where you guys can really set yourselves apart and kind of really create a cool experience for the prospect. So this is where you could send out things like that pre-tour information packet. You could also send out the welcome video saying, hey, we're looking forward to having you at the community tomorrow. If you have any questions, here's our number. Kind of a note on the welcome video. It's important to remember that maybe 10 years ago, it was a big production to make a video. But there's so many software tools now, even senior housing specific software tools that make it really easy to record a video. And it not something that has to be done every time. It could be kind of a generic video about the community from the salesperson. But once you've created it, you can use it in all kinds of automation, and it's relatively painless and easy and quick to use. So on the salesperson, oh, sorry, Holly, let me just go back to that one sec. On the salesperson side, some of the automations that you could do when you connect an automation tool to your CRM, especially, is you can set up tasks for your salesperson. So the day before the tour, you can have them set up with a task reminder to call. We do this with some of our call reps internally at NextWave. It makes it very easy and kind of mindless for the salespeople to know exactly what they need to do. Something else we've been experimenting with is a voicemail drop. And this is where you could pre-record an actual voicemail and send it out automatically to the prospect the day before. So it could just say, hey, we're looking forward to having you come in tomorrow. If you have any questions, here's the number. If you need directions, here's the number. Yeah, that's something that we're kind of experimenting with, but the idea being that once you create this experience, you can reuse it in a scalable, repeatable way in the future. So finally, the actual day of the tour. And on this day, this is where you can send, just like I'm sure you guys got for this webinar, an email before saying, hey, you've got the tour coming up in an hour or 2 hours or however long you set it. You can also send a personalized text that says, hi, insert name of the prospect. We're looking forward to seeing you in an hour or 2 hours at our community. If you need any help, let us know. Same for the salesperson. This reminds them that they've got a tour later that day. Kind of gets them set up. You can customize those email reminders to include links to the CRM so they can take notes. And yeah, this also is just a small step, but I don't know how many, I would have missed a ton of Zoom calls myself if I hadn't have something like this set up, for sure. So bonus, this is some automation stuff you could do after the actual tour. And examples of this are the next day following the tour, you could send a personalized text automatically that says, hey, thank you for coming in yesterday. If you have any questions, here's our, let us know. You could also send things like a post-tour survey where you could gather information from the prospect about the experience and how it went, and any feedback they might have on the tour and what could be done better. On the salesperson side, you can prompt them to add notes to the CRM. So this is big because they can obviously put in if the tour showed up or not. They could put in notes about the tour. It really comes in huge, just automating some of this process for the salespeople. So when it comes time to tracking, to reporting on like the results, tracking everything and reporting on the results, everything is in the CRM, and the salespeople don't really have to think about each step. Speaking of results, so these are results from a client that we ran just this simple automation program before and after the tour. And we tracked before and afterwards, and we measured that they had a 22% increase in the show up rate. So all things being equal, if the same amount of people move, if your salespeople convert at the same rate, that would be like a 22% increase in move-ins if they're converting the same. Another huge benefit of this is, like I said, the accurate reporting. So you could, when someone's tracking everything correctly like this and being reminded to track, you can figure out things like which lead sources can result in the most tours, or which lead sources result in the most flakeouts also, or the most no-show tours. So you might be able to determine, our leads from Facebook actually have a higher chance of flaking out and not showing up for the tour than our leads from organic search and things like that. And then obviously the experience is better for the prospect. It's more repeatable and scalable when you set it up this way. And it's also makes the lives of the salespeople better. When you have everything set up like this, they don't need to remember every single step in the process. There's a huge amount of their work is getting done behind the scenes. And it just kind of, they have a million things to do every day. It kind of takes away some of that anxiety around all the things that they have to remember. So improves lives for the salespeople. And this last slide is a case study from one of our actual clients who did our full lead response program. Vista Senior Living out in Arizona. They have 15 locations. The main takeaway from this slide is that we doubled the move-ins from their inbound leads. And the reason that we doubled the move-ins is because we literally talked to twice as many prospects as they were before. So just by increasing the contact rate, talking to more prospects, you have more opportunities, you have more sales opportunities. And that leads to a huge increase in the move-ins. And then this quote from Lori, I'll just go ahead and read it out loud. It was, working with NextWave has made my life as a sales director so much easier. Their system took lead management off my plate and allows me to do what I do best, showcase our community and have actual conversations with qualified prospects. So I love this quote because that's essentially what we're all about. We want to provide a better experience for the prospect, but at the same time, we want to make the lives of senior living salespeople easier. So yeah, love that quote from Lori.
Wonderful. Well, great. Thanks, Alan, for walking us through that example. And what Alan walked us through that was so great is it's an example cadence that your team could program to automatically go out to schedule tours and save you time while giving those potential residents the information they need. And it's something that they could set up on their own. Or this is the exact type of program that NextWave can help you set up and manage as well. So imagine that you have this program set up. It's all automated and it's running in the background. And now your sales team can focus on creating a great experience on the tour itself, which is where Holly comes in. So now she will be sharing best practices for turning your tours into memorable visits.
Great. Thanks, Olivia. So when we welcome a guest into our home, we want them to have a nice visit, not just a tour. So the last time you purchased a house or even rented an apartment, you wanted to find a place that you were comfortable in, that you could feel at home in, and that would meet all of your needs. So the person showing you that property or the home or the apartment wanted to make you feel at home by customizing your visit, so you could picture yourself living there. So even though we refer to them as tours, we want them to feel like a visit. Whether you receive a tour referral from Caring, a current resident, or another referral source, you always want to call and confirm. Not only does this work as a reminder and of course help reduce the chance of a no-show, but there's another purpose as well. So speaking to your potential resident about the visit helps you gather as much information as possible by having that meaningful conversation. And that information will help you set the stage for a personalized visit. I'm going to walk through an example. So let's say you're calling to confirm a visit for Mr. Burton and his daughter. During your conversation, you discover that Mr. Burton's daughter informs you about his needs, his interests, and hobbies. You discover he walks with a walker, he needs medication management, he's an avid poker player, and although he does have a sweet tooth, he is diabetic. He also loves to birdwatch, and he has a green thumb. So now that you're aware of Mr. Burton's needs and his favorite things, you can turn his tour into a personalized visit. A few ways to make his visit to your community stand out and leave a great impression would be to have a tray of sugar-free cookies ready for them when they walk in. Also, introduce your executive director and a member of your care team, so Mr. Burton feels comfortable when it comes time to discuss his care needs, such as medication management. I would also suggest engaging your residents. They are such a great part of that visit process. Have your group of poker players ready in the game room to welcome Mr. Burton and invite him into a game at some point. And also take him outside. Show off your raised garden beds and let him know that the garden club could use another member and they meet weekly. And finally, show off that apartment. Take him to the perfect apartment. First floor, walk-in shower, and a huge picture window to bird watch. So now Mr. Burton can picture himself living in your community. Always follow up with intention. Don't just call, say, how are you? always set out with an intention. I would suggest sending a handwritten note immediately. Who doesn't love to receive a handwritten note nowadays? And also make that follow-up call the very next day. They actually take some time, sit back, and then they have questions about your community that they weren't able to ask on the visit. And a couple other just examples of great follow-up would be to have a member of that poker group he met call and invite him in for that game. Have your chef make an awesome sugar-free dessert and hand deliver it. Or send him a photo of the actual view from his new picture window. These tips will help you stand out and ensure that Mr. Burton can call your community home.
Great, so that concludes the content portion of our presentation today. And I have seen a few questions come through that we can dive into with the time that we have left. So one question we have here is for you, Alan. The question is, what is the automation tool that does all of this? And I think you mentioned a couple.
For sure. Yeah, there's a couple that you could try out. For us internally, we use a combination of Calendly for a lot of the automation around events. For lead nurturing, we use HubSpot. You could use either one. I definitely like a lot of the features in Calendly because it's really closely tied to the exact time, and you can set up lots of things in there, but different emails and customized stuff. So yeah, I'd check out Calendly. But if you're looking to get kind of more in depth with it, HubSpot has a lot of really cool features that you could use.
Great. And one question we have here, I actually have a little bit of experience with, so I'm happy to weigh in. Is there any data on which platforms from paid ads specifically are converting the most? The example is Google search versus Facebook. I used to test this exact same thing as a paid ads manager myself. And, you know, if you think about where people are in the journey on Google search, they're actively searching for those solutions. And those tend to convert at a much higher rate than Facebook, where people are passively looking through. So they think about why you go to Facebook. You go to see whose birthday it is, or you go to, you know, look at babies and puppies. So those folks typically aren't going to convert at as high of a rate, but it certainly expands your reach by running on those channels as well. I hope that answers your question. Alan, Holly, anything to add on that front?
No, I think you covered that.
I would say that's pretty congruent with what I've seen too, Olivia. Yeah, we don't run PPC for our clients, but we work with other partners that do. But like you said, sometimes Facebook can be a little tricky, especially when it's the first time. I've seen some luck with the retargeting ads in Facebook. Mm-hmm. So once someone's already been to the site, using social media to serve up retargeted ads to someone who's kind of already familiar with your brand. I've seen those work pretty well.
Great. And we have one question here of, I'm not getting many leads. Any tips on how to generate more? Holly, would you like to take that one?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, we could help here at Caring for sure. But just kind of looking, are you using a resident referral program as well? Those can be your best referrals, who are also your residents, and community events, and of course, working with a company such as caring.com to receive more leads.
And if you are partnered with Caring, there are ways to optimize your Caring listing. So definitely making sure you're showing pictures, that you have plenty of information about your community, and reviews are huge. The more reviews you can get and the higher average rating, of course, helps influence those that are, looking for a new community as well.
Definitely.
And one other question we have here is, how do you turn around a no-show and get them in the door soon? So any tips on ways that you've been able to kind of overcome that?
I can speak just from experience. Just because they don't come the first time, I would not give up. Sometimes it takes 3, 6, 9 contacts to get them through the door, and sometimes it's because a medical issue arises. We don't know the reasons that they don't come. So I would just keep calling, send those follow-ups, and don't just think because they don't show up the first time that they're still not interested in your community.
Great. Alan, anything to add? That you mentioned, have you ever run a follow-up campaign for that specifically?
At that point, we've typically left it up to the salespeople at the communities to do the extra follow-up after that. But I do know that if someone does no show, like especially after all the other steps that we put in with booking the tour, with accepting the tour, if there's a calendar invite, there's usually a pretty good reason for it, and they usually do it. Included, like, for example, with some of the automation that we use, you can include reschedule links. So that's a good use case for the hour before notification. You can send out a reminder, but you could also include a reschedule link in there, so that we've seen that prevent a lot of no-show, like, preemptively. But I do know that on some flakeouts, once we pass them off to the sales director, that they have had luck getting them back in, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, great. Well, and Alan, you talked about it's a two-sided automation. You have the automation going to the tour that's scheduled, and then the salespeople. Is it ever difficult to get salespeople on board with this new type of system?
Good question. We've certainly working with clients and getting things set up at the beginning. I think any kind of change can be difficult for people. So any kind of new system can be difficult. But what we found is that after a while, once the sales directors or salespeople get used to how much of a workload this is taking off their plate, and when they see what the increase is in conversion rates of leads into tours, they change their tune. So at the beginning, it's kind of like, oh, new calendars, new tools, like what is all this stuff? But the setup process is relatively simple, and once everything is synced, like, the most painful part is even just syncing it up to the salesperson's calendar. So if they use Google Calendar or Outlook, it's just getting that initial sync and having them block the times in their calendar when they're available. But after that, relatively painless, and they end up loving it. And it's kind of like, how could I go back to the way I was doing things before with the pen and pencil? Yeah.
I can definitely see that. I mean, do you ever get any feedback though that, this automation route seems impersonal? And ever any feedback like that?
100%. That's definitely something that especially prospective clients say, like, oh, is it too much automated? It's a very people intensive business, which it absolutely is. And there's kind of a time and place for both. I think depending on how much data you collect on the prospect, there is a ton of ways to really personalize it. Obviously the most obvious ones are first name. Like, say if you're sending a text, hi, insert first name. We're looking forward to having you at insert community name at our community, and here's the number to call us if you have any questions. We keep them relatively high level, so with all the automations, there's a certain level of personalization you can do, obviously, but then you can't go too customized or granular, or else you're actually writing the email or the text every time yourself, and that defeats the purpose. That is pushback that we get at the beginning, but at some point in the process, we do ultimately hand it to the salesperson to take it across the finish line. So yeah, I'd say it's a combination of both, but you'd be surprised at how much you can actually do with automated tools and making it personalized.
Oh, absolutely. And just kind of like you were describing, of once those reminders are happening or getting people where they need to be, you can use that time, more to get more personalized, get more customized, plan ahead. So it's more about how people are spending their time. That's saved by that automation.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, we have some feedback in the Q&A. Someone mentioned that they have experience with Calendly as a mystery shopper, and what they've seen is that the follow-up is really comprehensive in comparison to the communities that are not utilizing. They were really impressed by it. So just goes to show people have had experiences with that, and it's really stood out to them. So very positive feedback there. All right. How do you respond when the tour notices a couple of residents who aren't being ignored but have their head down due to physical restrictions? Holly, have you ever had experience with that type of situation?
Yes, I would say, residents on tours, you never know. I mean, you're coming into their home, right? We remember it's not our workspace, it's their home. And so not ignoring, but maybe just still saying hi. They can't lift their head, that's okay. We're in their home. We say hi to them, greet them as we walk past, but not to ignore or to pretend that they aren't there. So yes, I have had that experience a lot. You never know what's going to happen on a visit.
Well, great. Well, another question for you, Holly, is do you have any suggestions on how to get referrals to open up and share more of that information so you can make it memorable?
Yes, and really just in my decades, right, Olivia, 2 decades, just having that conversation and really making them at ease. They're so nervous about coming in, and sometimes you can't get them to open up over the phone. So if you can't get them to open up over the phone, when you can have that face-to-face conversation once they're through the door, usually sit down and talk to a family, that's when they'll start opening up more, when they feel comfortable with you and you're just having a simple conversation. Some of the things in my example, Mr. Burton, truly, you're just going to find out as the daughter's talking and not even asking those questions, not asking, does he like this? Does he like this? It's just her talking and letting you know what her dad likes.
Great. Are there any recommended CRM systems that integrate with these tools most effectively? I know there are a lot of CRMs out there. Alan, are there any that, even if it's many, that you would list off as ones you've worked with?
There are, and it's tough to play favorites with this stuff because everyone has their own. For the one client I'm thinking of in particular, where we've kind of worked out a lot of the kinks, is with Welcome Home. Sometimes, and like I said, we use HubSpot for some of the automation, so that also has a CRM component. But if you're using a different CRM, most are integration friendly. I would just before you get in too deep with one particular CRM, check out their integrations. Like, just see, hey, do they integrate with Calendly? Do they integrate with HubSpot or other automation or scheduling tools? Most these days do, but I will definitely give some props to Welcome Home in the one instance I'm thinking of. It's been very smooth.
Great. And I would reiterate the same thing from Caring, in that we have a lot of integrations set up for most, if not the vast majority of the industry CRMs and other CRMs. So if there are any you're considering, certainly reach out and we can confirm whether or not your caring leads will integrate directly, which will save you time. And then, as Alan mentioned, a lot of these scheduling tools, they're really built to plug into all CRMs. So if you're considering them, we're happy to help. But like Alan said, don't want to play favorites. There are a lot of great ones. All right. And I think that wraps up. We have a couple questions that if it's more account specific, we'll get in touch and we'll follow up with you over that. But I think that concludes the Q&A section for today. And with that, I just want to cover a few takeaways. So in summary, we hope that today's webinar provided a concrete example of how you can automate communication to your scheduled tours to increase your community's tour completion rate and keep those potential residents engaged following the tour as well. We encourage you to personalize your tours into visits by customizing based on the prospective residents' needs and interests. And finally, if you'd like to stay connected with NextWave and learn more about their lead management solutions, you can email Alan directly here at alan@nextwavecare.com. So with that, thank you all so much for joining today's webinar. We at Caring, of course, welcome your feedback on today's presentation. And if there are any topics that you'd like us to dive into in the future, please let us know. We'd love to hear it. There will be a survey that pops up as this webinar closes where you can let us know. You can also contact the phone number and emails listed here. And to stay on top of Caring's upcoming trainings, I encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn, as well as visit our industry website, partners.caring.com. So with that, we will let you all get back to the commendable work of helping seniors. And we hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you all so much. Bye.